I found the tracker on Christmas Eve, flat on my back under my F-150 in the barn workshop. Sub-zero wind screamed through the gaps in the siding. My breath fogged white in the work light. I was doing what I'd done every Christmas Eve for 40 years. Change the oil, check the filters, keep things running. My hand brushed something smooth under the frame rail. Plastic, electronic, small as a matchbook but dense, tucked deep where it couldn't fall by accident. I pulled it out. GPS tracker, professional grade. The smell of motor oil and diesel couldn't cover the cold sweat breaking on my neck. I'd seen devices like this in Korea, 1952. We'd plant them on enemy supply trucks, track them, wait for the right moment. My wedding ring clinked against the steel undercarriage as I braced myself up. Only 3 people touched this truck. My wife Denise, my son Kurt, or nobody at all. I sat on the frozen concrete, that tracker warm in my palm now from my body heat. I had 3 choices. One of them was my wife. I chose wrong. I slid the tracker into my workbench drawer under a shop rag and walked back to the house. The cold followed me inside, clinging to my coat. Denise was at the stove, stirring something that smelled like beef and onions. She didn't look up when I came in. "Dinner's almost ready," she said. Her voice had that flat quality it had taken on 3 weeks back. Around Thanksgiving, maybe earlier, I'd stopped tracking exactly when. I hung my coat on the peg by the door, watched her. She checked her phone on the counter, then went back to stirring. Her shoulders were tight. "Smells good," I said. She nodded, didn't ask about the truck, didn't ask if I was cold, didn't touch me when I walked past to wash my hands at the sink. The landline rang. She flinched, actually flinched, like the sound startled her. "I'll get it," I said. "No." She turned fast, wooden spoon dripping. "I mean, it's probably my sister. I'll take it in the bedroom." She grabbed the phone off the wall mount and disappeared down the hall. The bedroom door clicked shut. I dried my hands on the dish towel, listened to the muffled sound of her voice through the wall. Couldn't make out words, but the rhythm was wrong. Too quick, too worried. I pulled my cell phone from my pocket and called Kurt. He answered on the 3rd ring, engine noise in the background. "Hey, Pop, what's up? You still running that Canada route?" I kept my voice low. "Yeah, heading to Saskatoon day after tomorrow. Why?" "Need you to take a package for me. Small thing, just keep it in your cab." Silence on the line. Then, "What kind of package?" "The kind you don't ask about. That okay?" More silence. Kurt was sharp. He knew something was wrong, but he was my son, and we'd rebuilt enough trust in the last year that he didn't push. "Sure, Pop, whatever you need. I'll meet you at the truck stop tomorrow morning, Boxing Day." "Okay." And I heard Denise's footsteps in the hall. "I gotta go. Thanks, son." "Pop, you all right?" "I will be." I hung up as Denise came back into the kitchen. Her face looked pink, flushed. She set the phone back on the wall mount and went straight to the stove. "Who was that?" I asked. "My sister. Christmas stuff." She didn't look at me, just kept stirring. "Dinner's ready. You hungry?" I wasn't, but I sat down at the table anyway and let her serve me a plate of pot roast. It tasted like cardboard, but that might have been my mouth going dry. She ate 3 bites and spent the rest of the meal moving food around her plate. Her phone buzzed twice. She ignored it both times, but her eyes kept flicking to it. "You feeling okay?" I asked. "Fine, just tired." She stood, picked up her plate. "I'm going to bed early. Long day tomorrow." It was 7:30. She kissed the top of my head as she passed, a habit, nothing more, and I smelled her perfume, the expensive kind, the kind she saved for special occasions. It was Christmas Eve. We hadn't been anywhere special. The truck stop parking lot was half empty the next morning. Kurt's rig sat idling near the fuel pumps, chrome gleaming in the weak winter sun. I parked beside it and climbed up to his cab. He had coffee waiting. "Merry Christmas," he said, handing me a cup. "You too." I pulled the tracker out of my coat pocket, still wrapped in the shop rag. Kurt looked at it, then at me. "That what I think it is?" "GPS tracker. Found it under my truck." His jaw tightened. "Who?" "Don't know yet. That's why you're taking it to Saskatchewan." I handed it to him. "Just keep it in the cab. Run your route normal. I need to see who notices." Kurt turned the device over in his hands. "Pop, if someone's tracking you, I know how to handle it. I've handled worse." I drank the coffee. It was too hot, burned my tongue, but I needed something to do with my hands. "How's your route look?" I-80 to Omaha, then north through Sioux Falls, cross the border at Portal. Should be in Saskatoon by Thursday. "Oh, perfect. Call me when you get there. Don't tell anyone else about this, not even your ex-wife." "Wasn't planning to." He looked at me with something like worry, something like respect. You sure you're okay? No, I said, but I will be. I climbed down from the cab and watched him pull out onto the highway. The tracker went with him, heading north on I-80. The morning sun was pale and cold behind thin clouds. My breath steamed. Now I'd wait and see who panicked. Denise's hand had frozen on the spoon last night when I'd mentioned Kurt's Canada run. Just for a second, but I'd seen it. I spent the day pretending everything was normal, watched a basketball game on TV with the volume low. Denise cleaned the kitchen, then disappeared into the bedroom with her laptop. Said she was ordering things online, Boxing Day sales. By 10 o'clock that night, I was half asleep in my recliner when her phone rang. She was in the kitchen. I heard her answer, then her voice dropped to a whisper. Sharp, urgent. I sat up slow. The TV was still on, some late-night show I wasn't watching. I could hear her moving toward the kitchen doorway, still talking low. Then I did something I hadn't done in 8 years of marriage. I stood up quiet and walked to the bedroom, picked up the landline extension from the nightstand, pressed it to my ear without breathing. The hell is he? A man's voice, angry, panicked. The tracker's showing Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Did he find it? I don't know. Denise's voice, tight with stress. He didn't say anything, just his normal routine. His normal routine doesn't include Canada, Denise. He's a retired grain elevator operator. He doesn't go anywhere. His son drives trucks. Maybe he found it and put it on his son's rig. Maybe he knows. Silence. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Ray's not smart enough for that, Denise said. Her voice had gone cold, dismissive. He takes everything at face value. It's why this is going to work. You better be right. We're too far in to back out now. I know, baby. Just calm down. Baby. That word hit me like a gut punch. Baby. She hadn't called me that in months, maybe longer. I can't calm down, the man said. If he knows, he doesn't know. He's probably sitting in his chair watching TV right now, half asleep. Trust me, Ray's predictable. Yeah, well, predictable doesn't explain why the tracker's in Canada. I'll figure it out. Just stick to the plan. Spring's only 4 months away. 4 months feels like a long time right now. It'll go fast, and then we're done. Free and clear. The man exhaled. All right, but if anything else seems off, I'll call you, I promise. Now I have to go before he wonders where I am. They hung up. I stood there in the dark bedroom, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. I set the phone back in its cradle, careful not to make noise. Walked back to the living room and sat down in my recliner like nothing had happened. Denise came around the corner 30 seconds later. Her face looked normal, composed. She even smiled. I'm heading to bed, she said. You coming? In a bit. Game's almost over. She hesitated. Everything okay? I looked at her, really looked at her. 8 years I'd been married to this woman. 8 years since Martha died and the loneliness got so big I couldn't stand it anymore. Denise had filled that silence, made me laugh, made me feel like I could love again. I'm fine, I said. Sleep well. She nodded and disappeared down the hall. I sat there until midnight, staring at the TV, without seeing it. That man's voice kept echoing in my head. Baby, stick to the plan. Spring's only 4 months away. The bank opened at 9. I was there at 9:02. Sharon, the young teller, looked up when I walked in. She had kind eyes and always remembered my name. Merry day after Christmas, Mr. Hollister. What can I do for you? Need to check if there's any loans in my name? Any new accounts? Her smile faltered. Is something wrong? Just want to make sure everything's in order. She typed on her computer, frowned, typed some more, then her face went careful. There's a refinance on your property, processed in November. Do you want me to pull up the details? November, 3 weeks before I found the tracker. Yeah, let me see it. She printed the paperwork and slid it across the counter. I scanned it. Land refinance, 480 acres. Terms that made no sense, balloon payment, variable interest, penalties buried in the fine print, and at the bottom, my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. Close but wrong. The R in Ray had a loop I never made. The tail on the Y dropped too far. I didn't sign this, I said. Sharon's face went pale. Mr. Hollister? I didn't sign this. Someone forged my name. Let me get the branch manager. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a cramped office while a man in a cheap suit told me that without the original deed showing my sole ownership, he couldn't help me. Bank had copies. Copies of the refinance I supposedly signed. But the original deed? That burned in a barn fire 20 years ago. Everyone in Prairie View knew that. County clerk's office can issue a certified copy, he said. You'll need that to dispute the signature. Fine, I'll go there today. Well, he cleared his throat. Office is closed until March 10th. Ice storm hit last night. Roads out to the county seat are impassable. They shut down for winter. I stared at him. When can I file? March 10th. Maybe earlier if we get a thaw. I stood up. The room felt too small, too hot. And if I can't get the deed by spring? He didn't meet my eyes. The loan agreement stipulates that if spring planning permits aren't filed by April 15th with proof of ownership, the property reverts to bank possession. 10 weeks. I had 10 weeks, and no way to get the deed. Frank Deering showed up 2 days later with a duffel bag that clinked when he set it down. Heard you might need some help, he said. I'd called him the night before, hadn't said much, just that I had a problem and needed eyes I could trust. Frank and I went back to Korea. We dug foxholes together, shared sea rations in the snow, watched each other's backs when the Chinese came over the hills. 60 years later, that still meant something. Come in, I said. Coffee's on. We sat at the kitchen table. Denise was in town, said she had errands. I'd watched her drive away an hour ago, phone already pressed to her ear before she hit the road. Frank unzipped the duffel. Inside were devices I recognized, small recording units, the kind you could hide in a car or a room, wireless, voice-activated. This is what you need, he said. Plant them where you think conversations are happening. They'll record everything, upload to a secure server. You can monitor from any computer. I picked one up. It was smaller than a deck of cards, matty black. Where'd you get these? I run a security equipment business now, online. Turns out being paranoid in a war makes you good at selling surveillance gear to paranoid civilians. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Ray, what's going on? I told him. All of it. The tracker, the phone call I'd overheard, the forged loan documents, the county office locked down by winter. When I finished, Frank sat back and let out a long breath. You know what this is, right? Theft. Worse, it's an ambush. They're using winter as a weapon, timing it so you can't defend yourself. He tapped the table. In Korea, we called this intelligence gathering. It's not dirty, it's survival. I feel like I'm spying on my own wife. You are, because she's the enemy now. Frank's voice was flat, matter of fact. You taught me something in Korea. Remember you said, sentiment gets you killed, facts keep you alive. These devices will get you facts. I looked at the recording units spread across my kitchen table, felt the weight of what I was about to do. All right, I said. Show me how they work. We spent the next hour installing them, one under the dashboard of my truck, one behind the living room curtain rod, one in the kitchen, tucked inside the top cabinet where Denise kept the fancy dishes we never used. Frank showed me how to access the recordings on my old laptop, how to download files, how to keep it all password protected. You need anything else, you call me, he said as he packed up his empty duffel. Day or night, I mean it. I know. Thanks, Frank. After he left, I sat on the porch, despite the cold. The wind had died down, but the temperature was still single digits. My breath came out in clouds. Down the road, I could see the grain elevator rising above the flat prairie like a concrete monument. I'd worked there 40 years, climbed that tower every morning to check the bins, knew every creak and groan of that structure. Felt like a lifetime ago. My phone rang. Kurt. Made it to Saskatoon, he said. Dropped the load. Heading back tomorrow. Good. Everything go smooth? Yeah, but, Pop, I've been thinking about that tracker. You figure out who planted it yet? Working on it. Is it... He paused. I could hear truck stop noise in the background, diesel engines and air brakes. Is it Denise? I don't know yet. But you think it might be. I didn't answer. Pop, if she's doing something, if she's hurting you, I can handle it, Kurt. I know you can, but you don't have to handle it alone. I'm 3 hours away. I can be there by midnight. Something in my chest loosened. My son, Martha's boy, offering to drive through the night because he thought his old man might need him. Stay in Saskatoon tonight. Get some rest. I'll call you if I need you. Promise? Promise. After we hung up, I went back inside. The house was still empty. Denise wouldn't be home for another hour at least. I opened my laptop and logged into the monitoring software Frank had set up. There were already 2 recordings, both from my truck, I clicked the first one. Denise's voice, crystal clear. Can't keep calling me like this. What if Ray checks the phone records? A man's voice. The same one from Christmas night. He won't. He doesn't even know how to check email. You said so yourself. I know, but nothing. We're so close, Denise. 4 more months, and that farm is ours. 2.4 million once we sell to the developer. We split it and disappear. Mexico, somewhere warm. Somewhere he'll never find us. Troy, I feel guilty sometimes. He's a good man. He doesn't deserve this. He's an old fool who got lucky with land his daddy homesteaded. We deserve that money more than he does. We're young enough to enjoy it. Young. Troy sounded mid-40s maybe. 10 years younger than Denise. 15 years younger than me. You're right, Denise said. Her voice had hardened. You're right. I just need to hold it together until spring. That's my girl. Now, about the life insurance policy. Did you get him to sign the beneficiary change? Not yet. He's suspicious about signing anything right now, but I'll work on it. Good, because if this goes sideways, we need that $500,000 as backup. The recording ended. I sat there staring at the laptop screen. They weren't just stealing the farm, they were planning for me to die. I saved the file, labeled it evidence number 1. Then I made myself a pot of coffee and waited for my wife to come home. Sunday morning came cold and clear. Denise wanted to go to church, said we hadn't been in weeks and people would talk. I didn't argue. In a town this small, absence gets noticed faster than presence. The Lutheran church sat on Main Street, white clapboard with a bell tower that hadn't rung in years. Inside smelled like old hymn books and lemon furniture polish. We took our usual pew, 3rd row from the back. Denise smiled at the neighbors, squeezed my hand during the opening prayer like everything was normal. Pastor Mills preached about forgiveness, the importance of trust in marriage. I watched Denise nod along, her face serene. After the service, Pastor Mills caught my arm in the fellowship hall. He was 65, gray beard, kind eyes that had seen a lot of Prairie View's secrets over the years. Ray, could I speak with you a moment, privately? We stepped into his office. He closed the door. The smell of coffee and old books filled the small space. Denise came to see me yesterday, he said. My stomach dropped. She's worried about you. Says you've been forgetting conversations, accusing her of things that didn't happen, getting confused about what you've signed and what you haven't. He paused. She thinks it might be early dementia. I stared at him. That's not true. I'm not saying it is. But Ray, getting older is hard. Memory issues are nothing to be ashamed of. My own father had them toward the end. I don't have memory issues. My voice came out harder than I meant. I know exactly what I've signed, and I know what I haven't. Pastor Mills held up his hands. I'm just concerned. Denise is concerned. She loves you. She's scared. Did she tell you about the refinance loan, the one with my forged signature? His face shifted, uncomfortable. She mentioned you were upset about some bank paperwork, said you didn't remember signing it, because I didn't sign it. Someone forged my name. Ray, he sat down behind his desk, gestured for me to sit too. I didn't. Is it possible, just possible, that you signed it and don't recall? Denise said it was back in November. That's 3 months ago. I didn't sign it. Okay, but can you prove that? I opened my mouth, closed it. Without the original deed, without access to the county office, I couldn't prove anything. Just my word against paperwork that looked legitimate. I thought so, Pastor Mills said gently. Ray, I think you should see a doctor. Get evaluated. Rule out any cognitive issues for your own peace of mind. There's nothing wrong with my mind. Then proving that will only help your case, won't it? I walked out of his office without another word. In the fellowship hall, Denise was talking to Jim and Carol Henderson, our neighbors. When Jim saw me, his expression shifted to something like pity. Ray, good to see you, Jim said, too loud. Too cheerful, the way people talk to children, or the senile. How are you feeling? Fine. Denise mentioned you've been having some hard times lately. Getting older's tough, isn't it? I forget where I put my keys twice a week. He laughed. No one else did. Carol patted my arm. If you ever need anything, dear, just let us know. We're right next door. I looked at Denise. She met my eyes with perfect concern, perfect sympathy. She'd already told them, already planted the story that I was losing my mind. We should go, I said. On the drive home, Denise reached over and squeezed my knee. I know you're upset, But Pastor Mills is right. Maybe we should get you checked out, just to be safe. I didn't answer, kept my eyes on the road. Fields stretched empty and white on both sides, frozen solid under gray sky. Ray, I'm trying to help you. I know what you're trying to do. What does that mean? I pulled into our driveway and put the truck in park, turned to face her. It means I know about Troy. Her face went blank, then confused. Oscar-worthy performance. Troy? Who's Troy? Your financial advisor, the one who calls you baby. I don't know what you're talking about. I heard you, on the phone, Christmas night. She stared at me. Something flickered behind her eyes. Calculation, maybe fear. Then her face crumpled. She started crying, big, heaving sobs that shook her shoulders. Oh my God, Ray, you're hearing things now? Making up people who don't exist? She grabbed my hand. Honey, this is exactly what I've been afraid of. You're getting paranoid, confused. There is no Troy. I don't know anyone named Troy. You called him baby. I've never called anyone but you that. She was crying harder now. Please, you have to let me take you to a doctor. This is serious. You're accusing me of having an affair with someone who doesn't even exist. I pulled my hand away, got out of the truck. She followed me into the house, still crying, still pleading. I love you, she said. I would never betray you. But if you keep making these accusations, if you keep acting this way, I don't know what to do. Maybe you need to be evaluated by professionals, for your own safety. Are you threatening to have me committed? I'm trying to help you. I walked to the bedroom and closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed with my head in my hands. Through the door, I could hear her on the phone. Her voice had stopped crying, went flat and businesslike. He knows, she said, or thinks he knows. He accused me of having an affair with you. No, I told him Troy doesn't exist, played it like he's delusional. I don't know, we might need to move faster. I waited until she hung up. Then I opened my laptop and added the church conversation to my notes. Evidence building, but evidence that required me to prove I wasn't crazy first. The next morning, I drove to the grain co-op. Dale Fincher ran the place now, had for 10 years since I retired. The office smelled like diesel and grain dust and burnt coffee, smells I'd lived with for 40 years. Ray! Dale stood up from his desk, shook my hand. Good to see you. What brings you by? Just wanted to check the commodity prices, see how wheat's doing. We talked grain futures for a while. Normal conversation. Then Dale leaned back in his chair, casual-like. Hey, Denise mentioned you might need some help filing your spring planting permit this year. That true? My chest tightened. She said that? Yeah, couple days ago. Said you've been having trouble keeping track of paperwork. He smiled, friendly, pitying. It's no trouble, Ray. I can help you file when the time comes. Done it 100 times. I can file my own permits. Sure. Just offering. In case you forget or something. I stood up. Thanks for the coffee, Dale. Walking back to my truck, I saw Jim Henderson coming out of the hardware store. He waved, called over, Ray, how you feeling today? Any better? From the diner across the street, I could see Carol and 2 other women watching through the window. When they saw me looking, they turned away. Half the town thought I was losing my mind. The other half pitied me. Denise had spent weeks building this narrative, one conversation at a time. One concerned comment to the pastor, one worried mention to the neighbors, one helpful offer to the co-op manager. She was killing my reputation the same way winter kills crops, slowly, inevitably, with everyone watching but no one able to stop it. I got in my truck and sat there. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, not from age, not from confusion, from rage. And underneath the rage, something worse. Doubt. Pastor Mills's question kept echoing. Is it possible you signed it and don't remember? I was 68 years old. What if I was forgetting things? What if Denise was telling the truth and I was the one making up conspiracies? What if I was losing my mind and didn't even know it? I drove out to the grain bins that afternoon. February cold, the kind that bites through your coat and settles in your bones. The bins stood in a row like steel sentinels, 12 of them, each one holding the memory of 40 harvests. My father built these with me in 1962. I was 23, fresh back from Korea, trying to forget the cold of those mountains by working myself to exhaustion in Nebraska heat. We'd mixed the concrete by hand, set the forms, poured the foundations. Dad said land without storage was like a body without a spine, couldn't stand up to anything. I walked the perimeter the way I used to every morning before work, touched the cold metal. It hummed under my palm, empty now, waiting for spring. The wind whistled through the ladder rungs. Out here, away from town, and Denise and people looking at me like I was broken, I could think clearly. I hadn't signed those papers. I knew my own signature, knew the way my hand moved when I wrote my name. The forgery was good, but it wasn't perfect. The R was wrong. The Y dropped too far. But no one believed me, or no one wanted to believe me, because believing me meant Denise was lying, and lying meant planning, and planning meant something darker than anyone in Prairie View wanted to imagine about the nice woman who'd married the lonely widower. I stood there until my feet went numb, stared out at the flat white fields stretching to the horizon. This land had been in my family since 1947. My father broke it with horses, planted it by hand that first year, built a house, built a life, passed it to me with the understanding I'd do the same for my son. Denise wanted to sell it to developers, turn it into condos or strip malls or whatever brought the most money. Erase 75 years like it meant nothing. My phone rang. Jolene, Martha's sister. I almost didn't answer. I hadn't talked to her since Thanksgiving, but something made me pick up. Ray, it's Jolene. How are you? Her voice was warm, real, no pity in it. I'm all right. Cold day. I can imagine. Listen, I'm driving down next week, Wednesday if that works. Need to talk to you about something. What about? Something Martha left. A lockbox. She made me promise to give it to you if... She paused. If you ever remarried foolishly. I almost laughed. It came out as more of a choke. She said that? Those exact words. She knew you, Ray. Knew your heart was too big. Knew someone might take advantage someday. Jolene's voice softened. She wanted you to be protected, even after she was gone. What's in the lockbox? Documents, papers she kept. I haven't opened it, wasn't supposed to unless the situation called for it, but I've been hearing things through the family grapevine about Denise, about you having trouble with bank papers. Who told you that? Does it matter? Small towns talk. And I remember what Martha always said. Ray takes people at face value. It's his best quality and his worst. She sighed. I should have given you this lockbox years ago, but I didn't want to interfere. Didn't want to assume the worst of Denise. Now I think I waited too long. You didn't wait too long. Wednesday then. I'll bring lunch. We can talk. After she hung up, I stayed by the bins until the sun started dropping. The sky turned that particular February gray, the color of frozen mud and dead grass and waiting. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of distant snow. I walked back to my truck. On the seat was the life insurance policy I'd pulled from the file cabinet that morning. I checked the beneficiary page 3 times, still listed Martha. I'd never changed it after she died. Never saw the point, since Denise had her own policy through the bank where she used to work. But Denise thought I'd signed it over to her. Troy had mentioned it on the recording, that $500,000 backup plan, which meant she had a forged copy somewhere, another piece of paper with my fake signature, ready to produce if I died unexpectedly. An accident on icy roads, a heart attack in the barn, something that looked natural for a 68-year-old man in the middle of a Nebraska winter. I locked the policy in my glove box and drove home. Denise was at the kitchen table when I came in, papers spread out in front of her. That red pen she always used for budget meetings. She looked up and smiled. Hey, I was getting worried. You were gone a long time. Just checking the bins. In this cold? Ray, you need to be more careful. You're not 20 anymore. I hung my coat up, poured myself coffee from the pot she'd made. It smelled burnt, like it had been sitting too long. I talked to Kurt today, she said, tapping her pen against the papers. He mentioned you asked him to take something to Canada for you. What was that about? Just some parts for a buddy's truck up there. Oh. She went back to her papers, casual, but I saw the tension in her shoulders. Well, that was nice of you. Helping out. Kurt's good about those kinds of favors. He's a good son. You're lucky. She made a note with her red pen. Speaking of which, I was thinking maybe we should have him over for dinner soon. Family time. Before spring gets busy. Sure. And Ray? She looked up again. Her eyes were soft, concerned. I'm sorry about yesterday, getting upset. I'm just scared. Watching you struggle with memory things, it's hard, but I love you. We'll get through this together. I drank my coffee. It tasted like ash. I know you don't believe me about Troy, she continued, but I promise there's no one else. There's never been anyone else. You're my husband, my partner. I would never hurt you. She stood up, came around the table, put her arms around me from behind, her chin on my shoulder. I could smell her perfume again, that expensive kind. We're a team, she whispered. Right? Right, I said. She kissed my cheek and went back to her papers. I finished my coffee and went to the bedroom, logged into the monitoring software on my laptop. There were 3 new recordings from that afternoon, all from the kitchen while I'd been at the bins. I clicked the first one, Denise's voice. He's getting suspicious. I think we need to move the timeline up. No, I can handle him. He's just confused. The lockbox? What lockbox? My hand froze on the mouse. Martha's sister's bringing it Wednesday, Denise said. Some papers Martha kept. I don't know what's in it, but if it's the original deed... Troy's voice, sharp. Then we're screwed. You need to get that lockbox before she gives it to him. I'll figure it out. Just stay calm. Calm? Denise, if he gets proof of ownership before April, the bank can't foreclose. We lose everything. I said I'll handle it. The recording ended. I sat there in the dark bedroom, laptop screen glowing. Martha had saved me. 10 years dead, and she was still protecting me. Wednesday couldn't come fast enough. The coffee shop on Main Street was where Prairie View's reputation lived and died. 6 tables, a counter with chrome stools, and gossip that moved faster than the Wi-Fi. I stopped in Tuesday morning for a cup to go and heard my name before I reached the counter. Such a shame about Ray Hollister. A woman's voice. Clara Mills, the pastor's wife. Denise is handling it so gracefully. I know. That was Barbara Kent, ran the flower shop. My aunt had dementia. Started the same way. Paranoia, accusations. It's heartbreaking. I stood at the counter. They saw me, went quiet. Then Clara came over, touched my arm. Ray, honey, how are you today? Fine, thanks. We're praying for you, the whole congregation. If you need anything at all, I'm fine, I said again. The barista handed me my coffee. I could feel everyone watching, pitying. When I walked out, the conversation started up again before the door even closed. At the hardware store, Bill Thompson asked if I needed help carrying a bag of screws to my truck. 5 pounds of screws. I'd carried 100-pound feed sacks for 40 years. At the post office, the clerk spoke slowly, enunciating each word like I might not understand. Asked twice if I was sure about the address I'd written. By noon, I'd been treated like a child or an invalid 6 times. Denise's poison had spread through the whole town. Every concerned look, every helpful offer, every careful word was another nail in my reputation's coffin. I drove home and found her car gone, a note on the table. Grocery shopping, back by 3, love you. I had 3 hours. I opened my laptop and downloaded every recording from the past week, burned them onto a CD-ROM, labeled it with the date, locked it in the fireproof safe in the barn where I kept Martha's jewelry and the truck titles. Evidence secured, multiple copies. Then I called Frank. I need phone records, I said. Denise's cell, can you get them? Legally? No. But I know people who can pull call logs if you've got account access. She's on my plan. I pay the bill. Then you've got every right to see them. Log into your carrier's website. I'll walk you through it. 20 minutes later, I was staring at a spreadsheet of numbers. Denise had called one number 47 times between December 20th and January 15th. Different times of day, calls lasting anywhere from 3 minutes to 45. That's your smoking gun, Frank said. Print it, save it. That's evidence of an ongoing relationship. Can you trace the number? Give me 10 minutes. He called back in 8. Registered to Troy Mendez, age 45, address in Grand Island. And Ray, he's got a record. Wire fraud 2019. Charges were dismissed on a technicality, but the guy's dirty. I felt something settle in my chest, cold and certain. Send me everything you've got on him. Already did. Check your email. Ray, you need to be careful. If he's done fraud before, he knows how this works. He's not some small-time operator. Neither am I. So after we hung up, I printed the phone records. Printed Troy's background, added them to the evidence file. The stack was getting thick. Audio recordings, phone logs, bank documents with forged signatures, a paper trail that told a clear story. But I still didn't have the one thing that mattered. Proof the farm was mine. Wednesday morning, Jolene's sedan pulled into the driveway at 11 sharp. She was 70, gray hair cut short, wearing a practical coat and boots. She had Martha's eyes, that same clear blue that saw through pretense. She hugged me on the porch, smelled like lavender and winter air. You look tired, she said. Haven't been sleeping much. I bet. She went to her trunk and pulled out a metal lockbox about the size of a shoebox. Old, dented, locked with a combination dial. Let's go inside. It's freezing out here. In the kitchen, she set the lockbox on the table. Kurt was already there. I'd called him last night, asked him to come home for this. He'd driven straight through from Omaha. Martha gave me this 3 months before she died, Jolene said. Made me promise 2 things. First, don't open it. Second, give it to Ray if he ever remarried someone who tried to take advantage. How did she know? I asked. She didn't, but she knew you. Knew you'd be lonely. Knew you'd want companionship and might not be careful enough about who you let in. Jolene's voice cracked. She loved you so much, Ray. Wanted you to be happy, but she also wanted you protected. She spun the combination dial. 3 turns, a click. The lid opened. Inside were papers, documents, photographs, and on top, a handwritten note in Martha's familiar script. Ray, if you're reading this, someone tried to take our land. You have proof here. I kept it safe. Don't let them win. Love always. M. I picked up the first document. Thick paper, brown with age, handwritten in careful script, land deed, original, dated November 3rd, 1947, signed by Ray Hollister Sr., my father, homestead claim, 480 acres in Dawson County, Nebraska. Beneath it were photographs, my father and grandfather standing in front of the first grain bin, me as a boy, holding a shovel helping pour concrete, Martha and me on our wedding day, young and smiling, with the farmhouse behind us. And beneath that, birth certificates, marriage licenses, property tax records going back 75 years, every piece of paper that proved this land belonged to my family, that I was the rightful owner, that Denise's forged refinance was fraud. My hands were shaking. I set the deed down carefully, like it might crumble. She kept everything, I said. She was a farmer's wife, Jolene replied. She knew what mattered. Kurt leaned over, looked at the deed. Pop, this is it. This is what you need. The county office opens March 10th, I said. 5 days. I can file this. Prove ownership, contest the refinance. And then, Kurt asked. I looked at him, at Jolene, at Martha's handwriting on that note. Then I take everything back. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed next to Denise, listening to her breathe, steady, peaceful, the breathing of someone with a clear conscience. I got up at 2 in the morning and went to the barn. The workshop was cold, smelled like oil and metal and old wood. I sat on the stool by my workbench, the same one I'd sat on for 40 years when I needed to think. The lockbox was in the safe. The deed was in the safe. In 5 days, I could file it at the county office. Prove ownership, contest the refinance, expose Denise and Troy for what they were. But then what? I'd been planning the grain elevator testimony for weeks. Dale had agreed to let me use the loudspeaker for an emergency co-op meeting. Frank had the audio evidence ready. Kurt had the phone records. Sharon from the bank had agreed to testify about watching Denise practice my signature. Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, I'd call the meeting, climb that tower, and broadcast everything to the whole town. Every recording of Denise and Troy planning, every forged document, every lie, it would destroy her. Not just her reputation, her entire life. Her family would disown her. She'd have to leave Prairie View, leave Nebraska maybe, start over with nothing. And Troy, he'd go to jail. Wire fraud, forgery, conspiracy, years in prison. I could do it. I had every right to do it. They'd tried to steal my father's land, tried to make me look senile, planned for my death. But sitting there in the cold barn at 2 in the morning, I kept hearing Martha's voice. Is this what you want to be? Martha had been gentle, kind. She'd believed in second chances, in forgiveness, in letting the legal system handle things quietly rather than burning everything down in public. But Martha had also been the one who kept that lockbox. Who prepared for the possibility that I'd be betrayed? Who made Jolene promise to protect me? Sometimes protection meant fighting back. At 7 that morning, Pastor Mills knocked on the barn door. I heard his footsteps, then his voice. Ray, you in here? I'd called him an hour earlier, asked him to come by, needed to talk to someone who wasn't family, wasn't involved, wasn't compromised by Denise's lies. Come in, Pastor. He stepped inside, his breath fogging. He wore his heavy coat and a wool cap, looked around the workshop, tools hanging on pegboard, the organized chaos of a working man's space. You wanted to talk, he said. I want to know if revenge and justice are the same thing. He was quiet for a moment, then he pulled over a milk crate and sat down. Why don't you tell me what's really going on? So I did. All of it. The tracker, the recordings, Troy, the forged loan, the lockbox, the evidence I'd collected over 2 months, the plan for Saturday's public testimony. When I finished, Pastor Mills sat there with his hands folded, staring at the concrete floor. "My God," he said quietly. "Ray, I owe you an apology. I believed her. We all believed her." "I know. And now you want to expose her publicly. Make sure the whole town knows what she did. Isn't that justice?" "It's one form of justice. There are others." He looked up at me. "You could file a police report. Let the sheriff handle it. Quiet, legal, no spectacle. The sheriff is Jim Henderson's cousin. Jim thinks I'm senile. You think the sheriff will take my side?" Pastor Mills grimaced. "Probably not. Not without overwhelming evidence. Which I have, but which no one will believe unless they hear it themselves. All of them. At once. So there's no room for doubt. So you climb that grain elevator and play the recordings for the whole town." "Yes." "Destroying Denise's reputation, her family relationships, her entire life. She tried to destroy mine." "I know." He stood up, walked to the barn door, looked out at the gray morning. "Ray, I can't tell you what to do. I'm not going to quote scripture about turning the other cheek or forgiveness. You've lived long enough to know when that applies and when it doesn't. But I will ask you this. What would Martha want?" "Martha saved the lockbox. She prepared for this." "She prepared for you to defend yourself. That's different than public humiliation." "Is it? Denise humiliated me, made the whole town think I was losing my mind. And you're right to be angry. You're right to want justice." Pastor Mills turned back to me. "But justice and vengeance aren't always the same thing. Justice protects you. Vengeance destroys her. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes they don't. You need to decide which one you're after." After he left, I sat in the barn until the sun came up. Thought about Martha, about the life we'd built, about the kind of man she'd married. She'd married someone who didn't fight dirty, who kept his word, who did the right thing even when it was hard. But she'd also married someone who protected what was his, who didn't back down from threats, who understood that sometimes you had to stand your ground. I pulled out my phone and called Frank. "Saturday's still on?" he asked. "Saturday's still on." "You sure?" "I'm sure." I looked out at the fields, white and frozen, waiting for spring. She tried to take my father's land. She made this town think I was crazy. She planned for me to die. I don't owe her mercy. "No," Frank said. "You don't." After we hung up, I went back to the house. Denise was making breakfast, eggs and toast. She smiled when I came in. "There you are. I was worried. You okay?" "Fine. Just the thinking." "About what?" "Spring," I said. "It'll be here soon." She nodded, went back to the stove. "Dale called yesterday, asked if you wanted help filing your planting permit this year. I told him you'd appreciate it. That okay?" "That's fine." "Good. I'm glad you're letting people help. There's no shame in it, Ray. We all need help sometimes." I drank my coffee. It was bitter. She'd made it too strong. "Jolene came by yesterday," Denise said casually. "Saw her car. What did she want?" "Just visiting. Brought some of Martha's old things." "Oh, that's nice." She set a plate in front of me. "Anything important?" "Just memories." She smiled, kissed the top of my head. "Well, I'm glad you got to see her. Family's important." I ate my eggs, watched her move around the kitchen. This woman I'd married 8 years ago, hoping for companionship in my old age. This woman who'd seen me as nothing more than a bank account with a heartbeat. 2 more days until I could file the deed. 3 more days until Saturday. I asked myself what Martha would do. Then I realized Martha would have never let Denise in the house. Martha's instincts had been better than mine. I had to finish what my stupidity started. Friday morning I drove to the county seat. The roads were clear for the first time in 3 months. Brown mud lined the ditches, patches of old snow melting in the weak March sun. The county clerk's office smelled like paper and floor wax and bureaucracy. I filed the original deed. The clerk examined it, checked the signatures against historical records, stamped it official, gave me 3 certified copies. "This supersedes any refinance paperwork," she said. "You're listed as sole owner, has been since your father transferred it to you in 1968. What about the November refinance?" She pulled it up on her computer, frowned. "This signature doesn't match our records. Someone should file a fraud report." "I will, after tomorrow." She looked at me over her glasses. "Sir, if this is fraud, It is, and it'll be handled. I just need to do it my way. She didn't argue. Small-town clerks understand that sometimes local justice moves faster than state law. I drove back to Prairie View with the certified deeds locked in my glove box. The farm was mine, legally, undeniably. No matter what Denise or Troy or the bank said, I had proof. Now I just needed everyone else to see it. Saturday morning came cold and clear. I was up at 5, coffee made, stomach churning. Kurt arrived at 6, Frank at 6:30. We sat at the kitchen table and went through the plan one more time. Audio recordings on the USB drive, Frank said, tapping it. Dale's got the loudspeaker system ready. You just plug this in, hit play. Phone records printed, Kurt added, holding up the stack. 47 calls in 3 weeks, that tells the story. Deed certified by the county, I said. Original and 3 copies, plus the forged refinance for comparison. Sharon's ready to testify about Denise practicing your signature, Frank said. She'll be there at 9. I looked at both of them, my son, my brother in arms, the only 2 people in this town who'd believed me from the start. Thank you, I said. Kurt squeezed my shoulder. Let's go get your farm back, Pop. Denise was still asleep when we left. I told her yesterday I was going to the co-op for a regular Saturday meeting. She'd nodded, barely looking up from her phone. The grain elevator rose above Prairie View like a concrete monument to every harvest I'd ever worked. 120 feet of weather-stained tower, the co-op logo faded on the side, metal ladder running up the north face. At the top, the loudspeaker system we used for emergency announcements, tornado warnings mostly, or the occasional call for volunteer firefighters. Today, it would announce a different kind of emergency. Dale met us at the base. Loudspeakers ready. You sure about this, Ray? I'm sure. All right. I called the members like you asked. Said it was urgent co-op business. Most of them should be here by 9. By 8:45, trucks and cars lined Main Street. Word had spread fast. Emergency meeting at the grain elevator. In a town this small, that meant everyone would show. Co-op members, church folks, neighbors, the curious, the concerned. I saw Denise's car pull up at 8:50. She got out, looking confused. Saw me standing at the base of the elevator with Kurt and Frank. Her face went carefully neutral. Pastor Mills arrived. Jim and Carol Henderson, Bill Thompson from the hardware store, Sharon from the bank, looking nervous but determined, Barbara Kent, Clara Mills, the sheriff, Jim's cousin, leaning against his cruiser with his arms crossed. 50 people, maybe more. Standing in the gravel lot, breath steaming in the cold morning air, the smell of diesel and coffee and mud hung over everything. At 9 o'clock exactly, I started climbing. The ladder was cold under my hands, metal rungs crusted with old ice. My heart pounded, not from exertion but from knowing what came next. 120 feet, 40 rungs. I'd climbed this every morning for 40 years, but I was 68 now. Hadn't made this climb in a decade. Pop, you don't have to Kurt called up. Yeah, I said, I do. 20 feet up, 40. The crowd below got smaller. I didn't look down, just kept climbing. My hands ached from the cold. My breath came harder. 60 feet, 80, 100. At the top there was a small platform, room for one person. The loudspeaker system mounted to the rail, weathered but functional. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket with shaking hands, plugged it into the control box. The system hummed to life. Below, the crowd had grown, maybe 70 people now. I could see Denise standing near her car, arms crossed. Troy had appeared from somewhere, tall, younger than me, wearing an expensive jacket. He stood next to Denise, close but not touching. Smart. I flipped the microphone switch. Feedback squealed across the lot. Everyone looked up. I'm 68 years old, I said. My voice boomed from the speakers, echoing off the buildings on Main Street. I've been called forgetful, been called confused, been pitied. Today you'll hear why. I pressed play on the first recording. Denise's voice crackled through the speakers. Can't keep calling me like this. What if Ray checks the phone records? Troy's voice. He won't. He doesn't even know how to check email. The crowd shifted, murmured. Denise's face went white. I let the recording play. All of it. The conversation about the farm, the $2.4 million from the developer, Mexico, the plan to split the money. When it ended, I played the second recording. Troy talking about the life insurance policy, the $500,000 backup plan. If this goes sideways, we need that money. Denise started crying. He's lying. Those recordings are fake. I held up the phone records. 47 calls between December 20th and January 15th. 47 conversations with a man she claims doesn't exist. Kurt stepped forward from the crowd, held up his own copy. I pulled these from our family plan. They're real. Then I held up both documents, original deed in one hand, forged refinance in the other. This is my father's deed, dated 1947, certified by the county clerk yesterday. This, I held up the refinance, is a forgery. My signature, but not my hand. Denise screamed up at me. You're confused. You signed it and don't remember. Then let's ask someone who was there, I said. Sharon stepped forward, young, scared, but her voice was steady. I'm a teller at First National. November 18th, Denise Hollister came to my window. She practiced Ray's signature on 3 deposit slips before going to see the loan officer. When she finished, she said, "Old men are so easy to imitate." The crowd turned to look at Denise, silent, judging. I reported it to my supervisor, Sharon continued. He's standing right there. A middle-aged man in a suit, the bank VP, stepped forward, nodded. His face was grim. I received the report. I should have acted on it. That's on me. Troy moved then, started toward his car, but Sheriff Henderson stepped in front of him. Think you better stay, Mr. Mendez, the sheriff said. Pastor Mills walked to the base of the elevator, looked up at me. His face was full of sorrow and something like respect. He mouthed 2 words, "I'm sorry." I looked down at Denise. She was still crying, mascara running down her face. But her tears weren't for shame. They were for being caught. This farm is mine, I said into the microphone. It was my father's. Now it's mine. Someday it'll be my son's, and no one is taking it from us. The sheriff arrested Troy on the spot. Wire fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit theft. Troy didn't fight it, just stood there with his hands behind his back while the cuffs clicked shut. His expensive watch caught the morning sun. Denise ran to her car. No one stopped her. She peeled out of the gravel lot, tires spinning, spraying mud, headed east out of town. I watched until her taillights disappeared. I climbed down slow. My legs shook. Halfway down, Kurt steadied the ladder from below. Easy, Pop. Take your time. When my boots hit gravel, the crowd was still there, silent, processing. Then Dale stepped forward and shook my hand. I'm sorry, Ray. We should have believed you. Pastor Mills was next. I failed you. I should have listened. One by one, they came, apologized, shook my hand. Some of the women were crying. Jim Henderson looked like he'd been gut-punched. I called you senile, he said. To your face. I'm so sorry. You didn't know, I said. She was convincing. That's no excuse. The bank VP approached last. Mr. Hollister, the refinance is void. We'll have the paperwork corrected by Monday, and I'm placing a fraud alert on your accounts. No one touches anything without your direct authorization. Appreciate it. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. We should have caught this sooner. By 10 o'clock, the crowd had dispersed. Just me, Kurt, and Frank standing in the empty lot. The grain elevator cast a long shadow across the mud. Hell of a morning, Frank said. Yeah. What now? I looked at the elevator. At Main Street, at the flat prairie stretching in every direction. Now I file the spring planting permit. Get the wheat in the ground. Do what I've always done. 2 weeks later, Denise filed for divorce from a motel in Iowa. Her lawyer sent the papers. I signed them without reading the details. Didn't matter. I'd already won. Troy's trial was set for June. The prosecutor said it was an open and shut case. Wire fraud carries 5 to 7 years. With his prior record, probably closer to 7. Denise tried to come back once, showed up at the farm on a Thursday afternoon while I was changing the oil in the tractor. Kurt was in the barn, saw her pull up, came to stand beside me. Ray, please, she said. Can we talk? No. I made a mistake. I was scared. Troy convinced me. You practiced my signature at the bank. You called me an old fool. You planned for me to die. I set down the wrench, stood up. You don't get to blame Troy for that. Where am I supposed to go? My family won't talk to me. I have nothing. Should have thought about that before. She stood there crying for another minute. Then she got in her car and left. I never saw her again. Her parents came by the next week, apologized, said they'd disowned her, didn't want me to think they'd known about any of it. I don't blame you, I told them. Sometimes people hide who they really are. Late April came warm and wet, the kind of weather that wakes up the soil. Kurt had quit his trucking job, moved back to the farm. Said he'd been thinking about it for years but never had a reason to come home. Now I do, he said. Someone's got to help you plant this wheat. We worked side by side. 2 tractors, 2 planters, parallel rows across 480 acres. The smell of diesel and turned earth filled the air, rich, alive, the smell of starting over. Jolene visited on a Sunday, brought Martha's photo albums. We sat on the porch and looked through them, Martha young and smiling, me with dark hair and no lines on my face, the farm in its early days. She'd be proud of you, Jolene said, for fighting back, for keeping the land. She saved me, that lockbox. She loved you. Even death doesn't stop that kind of love. After Jolene left, I walked out to the grain bins. The bins my father and I built 60 years ago, touched the cold metal. It hummed different now. Not empty, full of potential, full of the next season. Kurt's truck pulled up behind me. He got out, walked over. Just got off the phone with the seed supplier. We're good for another 40 acres if you want to expand. Let's stick with what we've got. Don't need to be greedy. He smiled. Fair enough. We stood there looking at the fields. Green shoots were already coming up. Tiny, fragile, but growing. Pop, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you regret it? Marrying Denise? I thought about that. I regret being lonely enough to ignore the red flags, but I don't regret learning the lesson. What lesson? That land doesn't betray you, only people do, and some people see legacy where others just see dollar signs. I looked at him. You'll inherit this place someday. When you do, remember that. Choose your partner like your life depends on it, because it does. I will. By early May, the wheat was ankle high, green and strong. I walked through it one evening, boots sinking in the soft earth. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. The grain elevator stood black against the light. I thought about Martha, about my father, about 75 years of family history pressed into this soil. Denise had tried to erase it, turn it into condos or strip malls or whatever brought the most money. But she'd failed. The land was still here, still mine, still growing. Some things don't change, some things shouldn't, and some betrayals just teach you the difference. I sat on the porch that evening with a cup of coffee going cold in my hands. The air smelled like growing things, wheat and warming soil, and the faint sweetness of cottonwood buds opening along the creek. Spring sounds drifted across the fields, meadowlarks, the distant hum of Kurt's tractor finishing the evening work, wind moving through new grain like a whisper. The grain elevator stood dark against the sunset. I'd climbed that tower in February cold, with my heart pounding and evidence in my pocket, broadcast my wife's betrayal to the whole town. It had felt necessary then, still did. But sitting here in May warmth, I wondered what Martha would have thought. She'd kept that lockbox for 10 years after dying, prepared for the possibility that I'd be foolish, that loneliness would make me vulnerable. She'd protected me, even from the grave. That's what love does. It prepares, it protects. It doesn't give up just because the heart stops beating. Denise had seen this land and calculated its value in dollars, $2.4 million if sold to developers. Martha had seen this land and understood its value in generations, in wheat planted by my father's hands, in grain bins we built together when I was 23, in the continuity of work and weather and seasons that don't change just because people do. Some folks see land, other folks see legacy. I heard boots on the porch steps. Kurt joined me with his own coffee, settling into the chair Martha used to occupy. We sat without talking, just watched the sun drop below the horizon, painting the wheat field gold. You ever gonna marry again, Pop? Kurt asked finally. No, I had my one great love. Everything after was just me being scared of dying alone. I sipped the cold coffee. But you know what I learned? Being alone isn't the same as being lonely. And being with the wrong person is lonelier than any empty house. That's pretty wise for an old man. Don't let it get around. Might ruin my reputation. He laughed. We fell quiet again. The tractor engine shut off in the distance. End of the day's work. Tomorrow we'd start again. That's how farming works. That's how life works. You plant, you tend, you harvest, you start over. Trust is like that too, I thought. You prepare the soil careful, plant the seed in the right season, wait for it to grow, but you don't plant in drought. You don't trust someone who's thirsty for what you have instead of who you are. My father broke this land with horses in 1947, plowed it by hand that first year, built a house and a life from nothing but dirt and determination and the belief that some things are worth holding on to. I'd kept it with patience and evidence in one cold climb up a grain elevator. Kurt would pass it on with wisdom. That's how legacies work. Not in money or comfort or easy choices, but in holding the line when everything tells you to let go. A green shoot pushed up through the porch boards, volunteer wheat from some long ago spill. I reached down and touched it gently, soft, new, alive. The land doesn't lie, it just waits for honest hands. Screen door creaked, Kurt stood, stretched. I'm heading in. You coming? In a bit. He went inside. I stayed on the porch as darkness came. Stars appeared, the same stars my father saw when he first broke this ground. The same stars Martha and I watched on summer nights 40 years ago. Some things don't change, some things shouldn't, and I was grateful, finally, deeply grateful, to know the difference.